I just are you getting an echo on there? Okay.
I'm not getting an echo. Are you?
No, I did for a second there, but I think it sounds like it's okay now.
Okay.
So let me just find my little speech here. Welcome to Italian Roots and Genealogy, where history lives in our blood. We explore the journeys, records, and family stories that connect Italy to the world. Because when you discover your roots, you just don't find names, you find yourself. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel and our blog and our newsletter and our great sponsor, Phil Italy. And my guest today is Barbara Corso. And Barbara, like me, grew up in New York City. So welcome, Barbara. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, when I spoke with your husband, we talked about your history, and you seem to know a lot more about the Italians in Ridgewood than he did. So let's start with, where's your family from originally in Italy?
My family is from two places, Agerola and Pittany.
Oh, so yeah. So
So
where?
go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to ask what is that Campania or Puglia or?
That's Naples. It's I'm Neapolitan on both sides. I'm married a Sicilian on both sides, and have connected with my family in Italy. I keep in touch with some people. I have been to Agerola, and they have been to the United States. Thanks to my brother, we have gotten together. My mother's family, that was my father's side, the Acampora side of the family. The Monaco side, my mother's side, I don't think anybody is left. We have tried to find family in Pittany. We have kept in touch with family here in the United States. In fact, growing up, we celebrated on June 11th, St. Onofrio Day. And that, if I may tell you, was a holiday bigger than Christmas. You stayed home from school, the men stayed home from work, the women didn't work, and we went to 11 o'clock mass at a little church on Bushwick Avenue in Greenpoint. And after that, there was either a big family picnic. Everybody came. My mother, not only her sisters and brothers and their families, but her cousins, my grandfather's sister, her family, everybody was there. It was either a picnic or they rented a big restaurant and we all went out to lunch. And that was every year, June 11th, without fail. I took my husband when I met him and we married. I took my children, and I still go to this day. If I'm in New York on June 11th, they no longer have the society, but the children of my mother's cousins, we still get together.
Oh,
There's only
wonderful.
maybe 6 or 8 of us, but we still go to mass June 11th. And remember, oddly enough, St. Onofrio Day, I think, is June 12th. So how that got confused, I don't know. Maybe it fell on the 6-hour difference between Italy and the United States. But it's tradition, I guess. The Jewish have tradition, the Spanish have tradition. Everybody has tradition.
So now was he the patron saint of one of those towns?
He was the patron saint, apparently, of Pittany. Patina.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's something. You're the first person I ever heard took off for Italian saint days. So that's pretty good.
I'm telling you, when I think about it, my mother would write the note. Please excuse my daughter Barbara from school tomorrow. It is St. Onofrio's Day. And when I think back of that note, I say the teacher must have looked and said, and what the heck is this? It's not Christmas. It's not Easter.
Did you go to a Catholic school?
I did not. No.
So that's even more surprising. Yeah.
Yes, I had religious instruction. We had 2 o'clock release on a Wednesday. I was 9 years old. And we would go, I guess I was even 8 years old, 8.5. We'd be released from school, and I'd walk from my elementary school with whomever was going to the Catholic church that we attended, St. Joseph's. And that was a good 8 blocks, maybe. And I'd go at 2 o'clock, we'd go to religious instruction every Wednesday. And I received communion, First Holy Communion, and confirmation 2 weeks apart. I wore the same dress. We put little red bows on the veil, and we wore red, I guess, bouquet had a red bow on it. And I remember the young boys had, instead of white for First Holy Communion, they had the red armband. And that's how I grew up.
So
Church
that's
every Sunday.
yeah. So did you do it? Did you do communion and confirmation together because of the religious instructions? I went to a Catholic school, so I did communion, I guess, in the second grade, maybe, and then confirmation in the fifth grade.
No, you must be younger than me. My children did that. My children
Yeah. Well,
had
I'm going to be
communion.
75, so
Okay, I'm going next week. I'll be 10 years older than you.
boy, you look 10 years younger than me. You look fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
I have no-
so I guess it was common to do it like that when you were.
yes, 2 weeks apart. And I think my brother, who's 6 years younger than I am, he came along, he did the same thing. So they were still doing it. I do remember my children, they received First Holy Communion at 9, maybe, but confirmation, they were up there in age, 7th grade, maybe.
Yeah, see, my brother's going to be 80, and I know he did his separate because I remember his confirmation. I guess I was maybe 6 or 7 or something like that, and because he's 5 years older than me. So yeah, maybe it just started like the mid-50s or something like that, where they started to separate it. Well, that's really interesting. See, I used to get out early because I went to Catholic school, so we used to get out at 1 o'clock.
Well, that was to make room for us to go, I guess.
Yes, exactly. We would be in school. Well, we'd start the regular time. I don't know if it was 8:30, whatever it was, 8:45, and then we would go through to 1 o'clock with no lunch, and then that was the end of the day for us.
That was every day?
It was just Wednesdays, just Wednesdays.
Wednesday, just Wednesday.
Wednesday.
That's religious instruction day, right?
So you grew up. So you grew up in Greenpoint, and then eventually you wound up in Ridgewood, though. Am I right? Or
I grew up in the Bushwick section of Brooklyn, which is
okay.
near the famous Broadway and Myrtle
Yes.
elevated line, and Bushwick Avenue, the Avenue of the Mayors. I remember. I think it's June 6th or something like that, where they have the Brooklyn Day Parade, and everybody, I think it might have been the Protestant religion, they would decorate their baby carriages, their bicycles. There'd be a big parade on Bushwick Avenue. Many of the doctors, I know my mom's pediatrician for me, myself and my brother was on Bushwick Avenue.
Yeah, it was.
And that's where
I think it was, we called it, because I don't remember the exact date, but you might be right. We called it Brooklyn Queens Day.
maybe it's Brooklyn Queens Day.
It's Brooklyn Queens Day. And because I remember, I think maybe the schools were closed that day.
I think so, because we used to go to the parade.
Yeah. I think it was called Brooklyn. My school wasn't closed because I was in a Catholic school, but the public schools were closed that day. So that's, and I know, I worked at Chase when they moved to Brooklyn. And what year was that? 92 maybe, or something like that. 91, 92. We put Metro Tech right there where you're talking about, not far from the Myrtle, where the Myrtle Avenue L was. And my dad worked for the Daily News, and his beat was Brooklyn for many, many years. And he's got one of his photos is the last train out of Myrtle Avenue L.
The Myrtle Avenue L, those we used to call those the cattle cars, because I don't know if you ever rode the Myrtle Avenue L. It went from Metropolitan Avenue in Queens to downtown Brooklyn.
Yeah, so I used to take the M train from Metropolitan Avenue. I lived on Fresh Pond Road in Ridgewood, and I used to take that train. But by the time I was taking it, the M was ending in Manhattan. The last stop was in Manhattan.
Yes.
Yeah.
The M train is different. I'm talking about the Myrtle Avenue elevated line.
Yeah. So
I said they had a gate that you would walk into the gate, and you always got a seat, and it would take me right down when I started work, or when I used to go shopping when I was 16. I thought I was a big shot. You were allowed to get on the train and go downtown Brooklyn shopping in Abraham and Strauss, Martin's, Russack's, Mays, all the big department stores.
Yeah, all gone now. And Junior's Cheesecake.
Junior's Cheesecake, that's correct. And there was a little store near Junior's called Sweet Sex, where I bought my prom dress and my Sweet 16 dress.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
All that stuff is gone now, right? That's
it's changed. I
yeah.
took my driver's test downtown Brooklyn, New York.
That must have been
Yes.
an experience.
It was quite an experience because in those days, you just applied for a permit. I got my license when I was 18. So I'm driving many years. You applied for a permit, you sat in your car or you leaned on the fender of your car and you wrote the answers. They asked you 10 questions, true or false. You filled in the circles and then you sat in the car and went for your driver's test and waited for the license to come in the mail.
So you took the test right on the street?
Right there, you did. There was no, when you went to apply for a permit, they just gave you a permit. You did not have to pass a test to
Really?
get.
Jeez. I didn't know that. I mean, by the
Yeah,
time I got there, I had to take the test.
you had to take a test for a permit.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no. When I got my license, I did not have to take a test for the permit. I just walked in, applied for the permit. They gave it to me. I learned how to drive. My dad taught me. And I went down, I made the appointment. And right then and there, you take the written test and the road test,
Wow.
not even knowing what we were doing,
Yes.
just the person teaching us.
Wow. So your neighborhood, when you were growing up, your neighborhood was, I guess it was all Italian mostly, right?
It was mostly Italian, maybe a lot of Sicilian. There were no people of color. That was if you went to Flushing Avenue and you crossed Flushing Avenue and Broadway. I was allowed to walk to Woolworths on Flushing Avenue, but I wasn't allowed to cross Flushing because the neighborhood changed, my mother would say. And why she felt that was safe and nobody from the other side of the neighborhood would cross over to my side, I don't know, but those were the rules. You were allowed to do certain things. We were near Rheingold Brewery. We were near Schlitz Brewery. I walked to elementary school. I came home for lunch every day, and I'm still friends with the boy next door. We grew up together. He lives in Florida now with his wife. We visit occasionally, and many other people that lived in that neighborhood. I had one Jewish girlfriend, which I'm still friends with today. And I had one friend whose parents got a divorce, and that was, oh my gosh, terrible when I heard that. Like her mom and dad weren't together anymore. That it crushed me. And I think it probably crushed her too.
Yeah. And that was rare back then.
Very rare, very rare.
So I always like to ask people who grew up, especially in a mostly Italian neighborhood, when you brought your non-Italian friends home to mom or to grandma's to have dinner or lunch, were they amazed at how much food was put out on the table?
There is a story of that. It happened in my husband's family. I think one of his cousins married somebody who was Irish and German. He was actually adopted, but when he came to dinner, the story is he thought the antipasta was the meal, and he just ate, and then he realized that there were 7 more courses following that. I don't remember taking anybody home for dinner. I think, and we never ate in a restaurant. I think once a year we'd go to a place called Paul's Pizzeria. And once a year, maybe we'd bring in Chinese food, which was chicken chow mein and an egg roll and egg drop soup. I didn't really learn that there were other things on a Chinese menu until I must have been 18 and started going out on my own and dating and going to different places. Neighborhood movies, neighborhood bowling. We walked everywhere. But I have learned that Italians that grew up, I was second generation, or I am second generation. My friends that are first generation that grew up on the West Coast, they had none of the same customs that we had growing up in the tri-state area. Holy Thursday, we used to walk to odd number of churches. Walk. The churches were close enough to walk. And I think the streets were closed for vehicular traffic, and we just walk everywhere. You visited 3 different churches. Holy Saturday, I remember my dad would take a little bottle to church and request holy water and come home with the palms from Palm Sunday and bless us all and bless the house. Easter Sunday, everybody was dressed in their finery. Holidays were spent with family. Cousins, I was the oldest of all of my cousins. We were 10, we're now 8.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting about that, you know, back then, even when I was growing up, that, Sundays, and I won't claim to be the most religious person in the world. I'm certainly not, but it was so nice on Sundays that everything was closed.
Everything.
Yeah.
The bakery was open. I remember coming home from church and picking up a loaf of Italian bread at the bakery and bringing it home. I'll tell you, when we had certain meals during the week, my mother would cross me. I lived on a one-way street. She would cross me across the street. I would walk a block and turn the corner to the opposite corner there, no other streets to cross, and I would buy bread during the week. And then I'd walk home, and whoever was passing on the street at that moment, man or woman, I would say, "Excuse me, could you please cross me across the street?" And that person would take me by the hand and walk me across so I could go to the one street I had to cross.
Wow.
Interesting.
How times have changed.
Well, they have changed, yes.
You wouldn't dream of doing that now. I mean, I walked to school when I was, I don't know, first, second grade. My school was St. Fidelis in College Point, and it was, let's see, I don't know, 7 blocks, maybe something like that. And I had to cross, our street was the bus route. So it was kind of relatively busy, but not busy like Brooklyn by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I mean, nowadays, take the subway from Flushing to Manhattan at, 10, 11 years old with friends. And I went to school, freshman in school, took the train. And now people have, and probably rightfully so, they're terrified to let their kids out and do these kinds of.
Well, my children grew up riding bikes. They grew up in New Hyde Park, first in Queens, Middle Village, then in New Hyde Park on Long Island. And they had friends. They were out on their bikes. My husband would joke. He'd say, "I come home from work. There are 7 kids in my living room watching TV. None of them are my children," because my children would invite their friends in to watch a program. And then in the middle of the program, they'd say, "Oh, I'm going on a bike ride," or "I'm taking the dog out for a walk," or whatever. They'd leave. What was I supposed to do? Shut the TV and say, "Okay, everybody out"? Well, they sat there. They all watched. I was cooking dinner.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Where'd you live in Middle Village?
Both Elliott Avenue and 75th Street. We were actually on a dead-end street, and we were considered Elmhurst,
Really?
near Our Lady of Hope.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize that because,
Near 9th Street, St. Elliott, not far.
yeah, no, I know. I had a friend. She lived on 69. She lived just a couple of blocks away from, was it Nita Stein's, the
Oh, yes, that was Metropolitan.
Metropolitan. Yeah, that was
Yes,
Metropolitan.
yes. Yeah, that's no longer there.
Oh, is it gone? Yeah.
Gone, yes. Another famous restaurant in Glendale called Duro's.
Yes, I know Dora. Yes, I know.
Yeah. I don't know if that is still there. And then there was the Glendale Bakery. I remember I had a close friend from 3rd grade. She moved away in 3rd grade and we remained friends. And she moved to Glendale. So when I'd visit with her, we'd always go to the Glendale Bakery. They had the best cakes and whatever at the time.
I know the Glendale Bakery. And I don't remember what street my brother lived on. He rented. I don't remember exactly where he was, but he was in the Middle Village for a while. That was a nice little quiet area,
Well, it's got a lot of traffic. We still have friends that live there. It's still very nice, very family. Everything's centered around the church. A lot of cemeteries surrounding the area. It's a 2-bus zone. We always had to take a bus, or a 2-fare zone. We always had to take a bus to the Metropolitan Avenue train or up to Queens Boulevard, wherever we were going to get into Manhattan or whatever. But I was never allowed to go to Manhattan on a train, I guess, until I started dating. I must have been 17, 18, going to Manhattan on a train. Never alone, always with somebody.
Yeah, well, I wasn't allowed to go to Manhattan by myself either, but that didn't stop me.
I didn't know how to travel. I think I was 16 and I had a job with an accountant over the summer. Scoville, Wellington and Company. I remember them well. And they sent me out one day to bring some stuff, some papers to Brooklyn. And I had to take the train, and I went to a payphone and called my father and asked him, he was at work, he worked for the city of New York, and I asked him how to go to where I had to go. And he told me what trains to take, and I got there okay. Then I called him again to ask him how to go home. And he said, okay, you change at Union Square. And I was so naive, green, whatever you'd like to call it. I didn't know Union Square was 14th Street. And so I stayed on the train, and I ended up, I had to call him again. I don't know where I am. I'm afraid to get out of the train station because who had money? You traveled with whatever you needed.
That's fun. And isn't it funny now, looking back on it, how disgusting those payphones probably were, but we didn't think twice about using them, right? Yeah, hi, I think I lost you. I don't know. Just try coming back in. I'm still recording. We could just pick up from where we, yeah, if you turn it off and turn it back on, it should come back. Yeah, it was funny because it was like, wow, she disappeared. You have the plug is on the switch. Yeah, you'll have to go back into Zoom, and then I'll have to let you back in. That's all right. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Believe me, this is nothing compared to what I have to go through with people in Italy sometimes with their internet. I don't. I wish I did. I really wish I had done a long time ago. Yeah, okay, I'm seeing you. Looks like you're coming back in. Yeah, there you are. Yeah, you're just on your mute on Zoom. You just have to fix that. Well, that's good. Okay. You just your microphone is on mute on the computer. That's all. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, now you're back. Now you're back.
Okay.
So before we
Okay.
got lost, I had asked, I said, isn't it amazing how, looking back, how disgusting those payphones were, but we used them all the time?
Yes. Well, there were less people maybe in the world, less germs, less. I really don't know, but we used payphones. We went in. I remember going in the sprinkler in the parks growing up, 7, 8 years. And then polio came along, and we were not allowed in the sprinklers anymore in the public parks.
Oh,
Everything
really?
was shut down. That was
Oh.
my first, I guess, connection or experience with disease, polio. Everybody was afraid, my parents were afraid. I know Joe has 2 cousins that contracted polio. So,
Yeah, I had a very good neighbor friend who had it. Again, I was came in late to that. I remember having to get the vaccine and, either in school or we had to go to the doctor and get the vaccine by that time.
Mhm.
By the time I was 7 or whatever, the vaccine was out. But yeah, I had a good friend around the block who had it.
Yeah. But I don't know, more people in the world, more people,
I just
more
think it was,
exposure.
yeah, I think it was just, just what you did, right? I mean, I think back now, like, being in these jammed into a subway car, like we were saying before, and having wall to wall people and everybody on top of each other, and you didn't even think twice about it.
Nobody wore a mask.
No, no.
No,
Yeah,
you just, and how about, oh, you're drinking a soda pop? Let me have a sip.
right, exactly.
Drinking from,
We used to wipe it
or
off like that, right? Like that meant that
it was it. That was it.
uh,
And if you were out all day, there was no place to go to wash your hands or whatever. You were just out playing all day. You went home and then washed your hands before you ate lunch, and then you were out again.
But I think that's part of the reason why we didn't get sick, because we were exposed to everything. There was, they didn't pump you full of antibiotics like they do now. You were sick, you got sick, you
No,
stayed home or whatever, but we were always in the dirt. It's like peanut butter. I never knew anybody who was allergic to peanut butter.
no, I didn't either. I didn't either. But now there are peanut allergies. Times have changed. Is it more people in the world, more exposure? I really don't know. I'm not a scientist. You can only be so cautious.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think, like I said, I did so many things I wasn't supposed to do. And if my mother found out now, she'd still kill me, even though she's not around. But
Do you have
they
children?
they couldn't check up on you back then.
See, I grew up in It Takes a Village. Everybody on the block knew what everybody else was doing. It was a closely knit block. We were in 6-family tenements, and if you did something or was seen doing something, your parents heard about it. But I grew up, my parents were very lenient. I was allowed to do almost anything I asked to do. They found a way for me to do it. If they didn't want me taking the train, they drove me there, picked me up. They would complain, but they did it. And like I said, you came home from a date, you were in the vestibule kissing your date goodnight. If the boy next door came home or his sister, and she was home from a date, you had to move because the vestibule would be taken over by the next person. That's how it was.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny.
It is funny. It is funny. I mean, I grew up in 4 rooms. It was actually 3 rooms. It was my grandfather's house, and they converted it to steam heat when my mother got married. And then I came along, and my mother had a huge bedroom in the middle. You walked into the kitchen, bedroom, and living room. When I was old enough and my brother was born, they put a screen, like those Japanese screens that don't go to the ceiling. People usually change behind them or whatever, or they're used for decoration. Well, that was put up as a wall between the two, and that cut the middle bedroom in half. It did not go to the ceiling, and it was held straight up by brackets on the floor. There was no door, and everybody was in and out, in and out. Then they had a sofa bed for me. So I moved into the sofa bed, and my brother got the bedroom, and my parents had a bedroom, and there was the kitchen. So there was a shootout in front of our house, and there were bullet holes in the garbage pail. We lived on the ground floor. There were bullet holes in the garbage pail inside, and my parents became afraid for me and my safety, so they took over the couch, and I got my mother's bedroom until we moved in 1962. So I lived there from 41 when I was born to 62 in May, and we moved to the Middle Village house. My parents bought a 2-family house. My husband and I got married that November. We took the apartment upstairs, and that's just how I grew up, and I never thought anything of it.
Yeah, well, that's the way I shared a bedroom with my brother. We had a little house. My parents had a small 3-bedroom house. My sister's, we got because she was the girl when she came along, and she had this, small little bedroom now that was, boy, I don't know how, maybe it was 8 by 10, maybe. My brother and I shared the next biggest bedroom, but nowadays, if they have to close school if there's no air conditioning, they can't do this, they can't do that. That's like,
It's very different. It's progress. Who knows? Evolution.
yeah, but
Can't go back.
we didn't have air. Remember, they used to open up the windows to let the hot air in when we were growing up.
Hey, I remember sleeping on a sheet on the floor because there was linoleum in the living room and the floor was cool, the coolest spot in the house. We didn't have a fire escape. We were the ground floor. People above us had the fire escape. It was my grandfather's house. I know people slept, they used to put their mattress on the fire escape to sleep.
Yeah, we used to go down to the basement because it was cooler. We didn't have air conditioning, but it was always maybe 5 or 10 degrees cooler down in the basement. So we used to go down there. It was a finished basement with, of course, the kitchen. We had to have the kitchen down in the basement, like all good Italian Americans. We lived in the basement, basically. And, my mother had the plastic on the chairs and all of that kind of stuff. That was it was, I guess we sound like old people now, but it was simpler times, right?
There were simpler times, and you didn't think anything of it. And when I said to my granddaughter that when I was growing up, we didn't have a telephone until I was 12. We didn't have a television until I was 12. We didn't have so many of the modern conveniences, forget all the computers and whatever. And she said to me, "Oh, Nona, you must have been very poor." I said, "I wasn't poor. Some of these things weren't even marketed. Poor, but we didn't know it. Everybody was on the same level." We'd go away in the summer. My father would get 4 weeks off. We'd go to the Catskill Mountains. The entire block, all the kids I knew were in the Catskill Mountains. They'd rent bungalows, and all the men would drive home on a Sunday night and come up on a Friday night. And we would stay there 2 weeks, 3 weeks. My mother would bring everything but the kitchen sink, all the pots for cooking, bedding, whatever she felt we needed. And on Saturdays, we'd go to town and I'd get my Archie comic book in the summer. That was 25 cents, but it was the
The thick one.
Archie comic book. It lasted me for the entire time I was there. And when we were through reading it, you read it again. And cutouts. There was no swimming pool where we were. There was a brook, and we'd go wet our feet in the brook, and my mother'd be so afraid. Oh, you're going to slip. Don't step on the rocks. It was all rocks. But we entertained ourselves. What we did all day, I mean, there was not even fishing.
Really? Wow. Wow. What'd your father do for a living?
My father worked for the city of New York. He started out as a typewriter repairman, and he used to work weekends for somebody in the neighborhood in Maspeth at the time. Maspeth Melody, the guy would take in typewriters to be repaired. My father would repair them on a Saturday for him and get paid extra money. And then he became a section stockman or something, in charge of all the warehouses, shipping foods to the hospitals and institutions for the city of New York. He retired, I guess, at 60 something. They told him he should retire, and he did. He was a good man. He did a lot of cooking. He liked to cook. I remember him cooking even on weekends, helping my mom cook dinners and whatever. After my mother passed away, he came with us to live, but there was a stipulation. I can't move in with you if I'm only going to have my own room, even if you give me my own bathroom. I need my own apartment because you have 3 children, and there will be times I need to get away from your children. Not that I don't love them, but I need my privacy. So we bought a high ranch. He had an apartment downstairs. He was a built-in babysitter. After he retired, he came home and he would cook dinner almost every night. I really never cooked every day until the pandemic, and I was here with Joe in Arizona, and I had to cook every day. Before that, it was either my mother, my mother-in-law, my father. Everybody was cooking for us. Take home this, take home that. It was a good life. I have no complaint.
Well, and earlier you mentioned about going to restaurants. I had the same experience. I mean, we didn't go to restaurants. A couple of times it was a treat to go to a restaurant. There was White Castle, for fast food, and like you said, Chinese food. I didn't like Chinese food, so I don't know what they fed me when we went to a Chinese restaurant. I don't remember. And yeah, we go to an Italian restaurant in Flushing once or twice a year, and that was it. We were at my grandmother's every Sunday, and that was like being at a restaurant, only better food.
Well, I didn't grow up with grandmothers. My grandmothers both passed away. One before I was born, one I was a year and a half when she passed away. And so it was just aunts, uncles. But I was the firstborn on my mother's side and the second on my father's side. So I was really, especially my mother's side, I grew up the favorite. I think the next one to come along was 2 years younger than me. My cousin Adelaide, she was also, but they kind of were separated. They didn't come to family reunions and gatherings on holidays. They'd show up later in the day. I don't know. I didn't grow up close with her, but yet I still keep in touch with her. I'm very big on keeping in touch with a lot of people. So it's a good thing. I'm the only one of the cousins that she does send a birthday card, and she gives me an update on what's happening.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like that in a lot of families. I used to be my godparents' favorite until they had their oldest granddaughter, Susan, and then I was pushed out of the picture. Susan took over as the favorite. I tell her that all the time. I was the big deal until you rolled around.
Well, my mother had a miscarriage between myself and my brother. And when he came along, I was 6. And I always say to my granddaughter, life changed. She says to me, I know what you mean, Nona, because when my brother was born, he's 4 years younger than she is. She says, life changed for me too. Well, you're in the spotlight. They always say the firstborn has all the attention, and then they have to learn to share. Everybody else was born into sharing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was the middle child in my family, so I had the worst of both worlds. I was too young to do what my brother did and too old to do what my sister did. Because my brother's 5 years old and my sister's 7 years younger. So there was a big gap between the three of us. But
You talk about Italian customs. I remember as a teenager, we used to go to a place. It was another thing we did going for summer vacation. We'd go to like a boarding house where they'd serve you 3 meals a day and you made your own fun. They had a pool, they had maybe ping pong tables, tennis courts. You could probably go into town for the ice cream and all that. Anyway, my mother loved this place. We started out with Shaluras in Marlboro, New York. And then we ended up in Pine Bush, New York, at a place called Fiscarelli's Bridgeside Farm, which is now a cornfield. I went back to see what it had become. Anyway, I remember my parents met a couple there who were saying how they couldn't get married until the sister got married in the family, an Italian custom. The daughter had to be married, the oldest daughter, before the brothers could get married. I had never heard of that. I must have been 16 when I learned that.
yeah, no, I've heard it. I didn't hear it back then, but yeah, I've heard about that since then. Well, Barbara, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, I could go on for another 3 hours with this, but
Thing is,
yeah, and that's kind of why I do this. I think for anybody who grew up, there's always fun for people who grew up in Italian, but I think this is going to be great for people who grew up in Brooklyn and can relate to your growing up in Brooklyn and taking the subway and all of that kind of stuff,
it wasn't really Brooklyn because there was Bay Ridge, Canarsie, all of those areas that I had never gone to. I remember we went to Canarsie once as a child. One of the neighbors on my block on Evergreen Avenue had a victory garden in Canarsie. So it must have been during the war. And they were growing vegetables on a plot of land, I guess, that they owned. And we went there to water and collect the peppers and whatever. But I didn't know Brooklyn itself, except for Sheepshead Bay. We used to go to Lundy's. Do you remember Lundy's?
Yeah.
That was a big Friday night thing in the summertime for clams on the half shell. And then you couldn't mix ice cream with the clams. You'd have to wait a couple of hours or something. But it was a big, we'd all pile into a Hudson. My Uncle Peter owned a Hudson. And two families would get in this Hudson, all the kids. I remember sitting on the floor in the back of the Hudson, and we'd go to, and he always had The Shadow on the radio or Inner Sanctum on the radio. And when I think now, we never listened to music in his car. He always had these, everybody was talking. How he could hear when you look back now, you wonder. But that's what life was like. It was simpler. Many people say, I wish I could go back. I don't think we can. No. It's nice to reminisce, but I don't know who said, once a mind is stretched to a new dimension, it can never return to its original form. Thomas Wolfe, somebody said that.
I never heard that before. Yeah, well, that makes sense. I used to, when my uncle moved from Corona to College Point, my grandmother was still on Corona, and on Sundays, I would walk to his house a few blocks, and it was a College Point Boulevard stretched for about maybe a mile and a half, and there was no lights and and I would sit on his lap and drive the car.
Yes, I did that many a time. I was driving at 13 up in the Catskill Mountains on the little roads in the back. My father would take me out and teach me.
Yeah, fantastic. That's fantastic stuff.
They were good times, I'm sure people do. I remember putting my grandson on my lap and letting him drive, and I'm, pushing the gas and the brake, but he's, yes. My hand is on the bottom of the wheel, and he thinks he's a big shot,
Yeah, now you get arrested if you did that.
Well, I don't know. You have to be caught. I think that's safer than some of the people driving out there today.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm right there with you on that one. I'm right there with you on that one. Well, thanks again, Barbara. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun
Well,
for
thank
sure.
you.
Don't
And
go
how
away.
was the
Oh, that's okay. That's nothing. Don't go away. I'm just going to stop the recording for a second. We'll just catch up. If I can find the right button. Here it is.